We
are
cultivate.
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 We are cultivate.
Hello and welcome to Ye Olde Crime, where we discuss the funny, strange, and obscure crimes of yesteryear. I'm your host, Lindsay Valenti, and with me is my sister and co-host, Maddie Stengel.
Hello.
Hi.
You survived.
I did.
Yeah.
And you did too.
I did too.
We had a
wicked storms last night in the good old Midwest.
I owe you an advanced apology for this episode.
Oh no.
Because this isn't the original content that you had requested. The topic that you requested, which I will move to a later episode.
Okay.
It was about the women in the Mongol Empire.
Oh yeah.
It was so involved. And
so you want to actually really dedicate some good time to it.
Yeah. And it's something where there's so much, it might end up being like our first two-parter because there's so much involved in it.
Nice.
And I was also binge reading a book at the same time that I was trying to get into out of my writer's block. And it wasn't a good combination.
Okay.
So I want to thank Carrie in advance for her research for that because I don't want her to feel bad that I'm not doing it. I will do it. It was just a combination
totally
of
fine.
writer's block and it being a really involved topic that I couldn't do it this week.
Well, I'm glad you're dedicating the proper amount of time to it enough for a two-parter later. That's really exciting. We should do it on the Asian Pacific month.
Yes, we should.
And have a nice episode for that.
So instead, I picked a topic that I thought would be of interest to you that took place not that far from where we grew up.
Okay, there's no long pig?
No.
Okay. When you initially were like, I need to apologize to you in advance, I was like, I did not pick a story with long pig. Don't you dare come at me with some long pig cannibalistic BS. Not on my birthday month.
I thought your story idea was garbage, so I went.
So I did what you fear the most.
Full-on cannibalism.
Your birthday was over.
So instead, I will be telling you about the Squirrel Cage Jail.
I know a little bit about this.
Okay.
But
awesome.
Not nearly enough to remember. Yay, okay.
I learned a lot of things. Information was pulled from the following sources: a 2022 Let's Go Iowa blog post by Kim, a 2009 The Daily Nonpareil article by Kim Bosquet. Yep. 2006 The Daily Nonpareil article by Keith Mellon. 2006 The Daily Nonpareil article by Tim Johnson. 2003 The Daily Nonpareil article by Greg Jarrett. In 1994, The Daily Nonpareil article by Carla Chance. Atlas Obscura, Council Bluffs Convention and Visitors Bureau, Historical Society of Pottawatomie County, 2 Roadside America links, Travel Iowa, and 3 Wikipedia links.
Nice.
And links to all of these articles will be included in the show notes. We wouldn't be here without support from listeners like you. If you're interested in supporting us financially, you can leave a one-time or monthly donation over on Buy Me a Coffee or our Venmo page. Links are in the show notes. And we make a point of reaching out to send you a thank you note and stickers to show our appreciation.
Want to show your support in a more concrete way? Pick up some Ye Olde Crime merch over at our TeePublic shop. We shout out whenever there is a sale each month, and we work to make sure we're creating new designs and changing it up whenever possible. And hey, thanks for listening.
So, the Squirrel Cage Jail, which is located, as you may have guessed, in Council Bluffs, Iowa,
Yeah.
is one of the most unusual and intriguing jails in American history.
Ooh.
Now, Council Bluffs, which is located in the southwestern section of Iowa, shouldn't be confused with the Council Bluff that is located on the Nebraska side of the Missouri River.
Yep.
Council Bluffs became an Indian reservation for members of the Council of Three Fires in the 1830s, consisting of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples. The tribes were forced out of the Chicago area as a result of the Treaty of Chicago so that the city of Chicago could be incorporated.
Rude.
Of the three tribes, the Potawatomi were the largest, led by Chief Sauganash, and for a time, the 1,000 to 2,000 members had settled east of the Missouri River in indigenous lands that were located between Kansas and Missouri, so they were further south.
Okay.
And this move was done in part to avoid any sort of conflicts between them and the Sioux tribe, who were native to the Council Bluffs area.
Yep. I was just going to say, I was surprised that the Sioux peoples weren't part of that. But yeah, they were. Weren't they known for being a pretty formidable, fearsome bunch?
Yeah, they could be very aggressive if provoked.
They had a good stronghold on that area, which, like, good for them. I mean, it's your land.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of places and locations and businesses are named after the Sioux peoples in that area of
Sioux City, Sioux
the
Center,
Midwest.
Sioux County. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, that move ceased to matter once the Platte Purchase was made in 1837, in which the government purchased land from the Iowa, Sac, and Fox tribes, resulting in the Potawatomi being forced to move to the Indian reservation in Council Bluffs.
Could you imagine how rude that would be? Like, you finally found the land that you like, and they're like, actually, a group of other people that you don't know want it, so get out. You'd be so tired. How soon did all this happen? Within, like, just a couple of years, or was it a decade? Because that would suck, too, if it was like...
Within, like, 5 years.
That sucks. That's so many people to move.
Mm-hmm. Sauganash's village in the reservation would go on to be called Caldwell's Camp in recognition of his English name of Billy Caldwell, and his tribe would occasionally be referred to as the Bluff Indians. So Sauganash, his father was, I think, a Canadian officer or an English officer that, like, did stuff in Canada, and then his mom was Potawatomi.
Okay.
So that's why he had an English name.
But super progressive, having a mixed race chief, too.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I didn't translate his name, but I don't really care. So over the course of the next 2 years, a missionary by the name of Pierre Jean de Smet founded St. Joseph's Mission in an effort to convert the members of the quote-unquote violent and brutal Potawatomi to Christianity to protect them from whiskey traders.
Yep. Protect them from sin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And vice, yes.
Yeah. Because that's what they had to worry about after being, a bit, like, thrown out of their homes. Now, this is, like, the third move?
Forced to relocate 3 times, yeah.
Forcibly moved, yeah, cool.
As you can probably guess, he had little success and resorted to secretly baptizing the children of the tribe.
That's awful.
That's why I didn't really care if I said his name right or not.
Yeah,
I don't care.
He sucks.
In 1848, the town was renamed to Canesville and became a stopping point for Mormons as they continued their migration to Utah.
Canesville. I wonder, did they know the name? Canesville, was it after somebody probably? It's usually somebody tragically died and then they're like, this is theirs now.
Yeah, I think it was the name of the person that was, like, leading the
Mormon
whatever.
camp?
Yeah. I could be wrong. I didn't look too deeply into it. So Canesville has been noted as the head of the Mormon Trail. So historically, it is noted as the place where the Mormon Trail starts on its way to Utah.
Interesting. that far centered.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like dead. I was pretty dead middle America at
Mm-hmm.
Missouri. So.
A few years later, in 1852, the town was renamed to Council Bluffs, and at this time it had a lively steamboat trade and became a major outfitting point along the Missouri River. Fun fact, it was also noted by President Abraham Lincoln as the official starting point of the Transcontinental Railroad, which was completed in 1869 with Mile Zero starting at the crossroads of 21st Street and 9th Avenue.
Interesting. Huh. I'm thinking of Council Bluffs because we grew up not too far away from it, honestly, and I never understood why it was so, like, why people were so stuck up about it. But, like, yeah, I mean, they had bragging rights. They
Now it
had
kind of
legitimate
makes
bragging
sense.
rights.
Yeah.
And now I'm just a
Yeah.
shitty kid that grew up and didn't like them just because.
Council Bluffs.
We were school rivals, okay? Shut up.
Shut up. Given the lawlessness that started to overtake the area in the 1880s, the people of Pottawatomie County were interested in constructing a jail, but they didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on it.
Of course not. Well, not if they keep getting robbed. What money?
That's fair. That's fair. So their first jail, which was a simple wooden building, was constructed in 1854. It was replaced in 1866, but that one was condemned by the Board of Health in 1882.
It must have been real bad, because did they
Yeah.
ever condemn anything before the 1900s? Like, truly?
Yeah. I don't know.
That's really concerning.
Enter the Squirrel Cage Jail. So in April of 1885, 3 years later,
Mhm.
construction of the Squirrel Cage Jail began, which coincidentally was also the same year that construction began on the county's new courthouse.
All in one.
Yep.
Let's get a discount. Let's bundle and save.
Yep. It's a twofer.
Yeah.
The structure, which was designed by William H. Brown and Benjamin F. Haw, cost $30,000 or $973,000 today and was finished within 5 months, which is very fast.
Dang.
It officially opened on September 11th, 1885, welcoming its first 11 convicts.
That's not a lot to start.
Fun fact, the jail was built on the site of an old church morgue.
No. Why?
Because why not?
What? But, like, they still believed in ghosts back then. Like, come on now.
Apparently they were like, health and safety board what? Like, we don't care.
Maybe that was their big FU. Condemn the building, we'll make it haunted instead.
No kidding. So the design, known as a rotary
It's
jail,
cleaner than a morgue.
was invented by Brown and Haw of Indianapolis, Indiana, and the patent of which was issued on July 12, 1881. On the patent, it declared, quote, "The object of our invention is to produce a jail in which prisoners can be controlled without the necessity of personal contact between them and the jailer or guard."
Yep, I do remember this now.
Yeah. It consists first of a circular cell structure of considerable size inside the usual prison building, divided into several cells capable of being rotated, surrounded by a grating in close proximity thereto, which has only such number of openings, usually one, as is necessary for the convenient handling of prisoners. End quote.
Yeah, so I like to think of it as, those pill containers that have the different sections. It's like that, only you would rotate all of the little pill pockets for the one exit.
Mm-hmm. So the design of the jail is unique in that it consists of pie-shaped cells that would be rotated around a core that doubled as a sanitary plumbing system, which would have been a luxury at this time in history.
Yeah.
So think of it like a lazy Susan for prisoners with steel-lined walls covered by a giant metal drum.
Oh, God, it would be so awful.
So the cell blocks themselves could be rotated with ease by a single person using a hand crank that was connected to gears below the structure, which was supported by a ball-bearing surface, which allowed for a smoother rotation. So it's not like ka-clunk, ka-clunk, ka-clunk.
Right.
So the cylinder in the Squirrel Cage Jail was 28 feet or 8.5 meters tall, with a diameter of 24 feet or 7.3 meters wide. Yeah, diameter.
Yeah, it's not a lot of space.
It's not very big.
Mm-mm.
Fun fact, the cells themselves, like the circular structure,
Mhm.
when not occupied, weighed a total of 90,000 pounds or 45 tons.
Yeah, those gears were really working hard.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I hope they were lubing them well.
God, I hope so. So each cell had a single door that faced out from the pie shape.
Mhm.
And this allowed the jailer to put the prisoner in or take them out, and then crank the drum to spin it to another cell.
That's so crazy.
And essentially, it allowed one jailer to watch several prisoners safely.
In theory, yes.
Now, according to Brittany Turpin, who was executive director of the Rotary Jail Museum in Crawfordsville, Indiana, which is one of the only remaining Rotary jails in the country, stated of the concept, quote, "The idea behind a Rotary jail is that you didn't have to have as many guards. It was also the idea that inmates should be treated more humanely. They had toilets inside their cells at a time when most people didn't have toilets inside their houses." End quote.
Yeah. So they just really focused more on the sanitation part so that they wouldn't be condemned again,
Mm-hmm.
and then cut costs by having to reduce their workforce.
Yes. And
Interesting.
prisoners could have had it worse.
They definitely could have. Yeah.
At the jail, they slept on straw mattresses, they got 3 meals a day, they had windows, and even were able to be seen by a doctor when necessary,
Wow.
because there was like a little infirmary area.
That is very modern of them at the time.
At the Squirrel Cage Jail in Council Bluffs, the design was unique due to the fact that it was the only 3-story rotary jail to ever be constructed,
Yeah, there's probably a reason for that.
giving it a total of 30 jail cells to hold 60 prisoners.
No.
The front of the building contained offices for the jailer and their family, a kitchen, detention cells, and quarters for women. So the children's and women's quarters were designed to hold an additional 20 prisoners.
Okay.
Only men would be held in the rotary section of the jail, and any male offender over the age of 14 was considered a man.
Hmm.
And each cell was set up to hold 2 inmates and would include 2 bunks, a bench, and a toilet.
That's a lot of stuff for that small amount of space.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Now, each jail floor contained 10 cells, but the first floor was more for people who were being held for a short period of time. So think like drunks pulled off the street, shoplifters, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously, juveniles and women were held in their own separate area, but there was also an area for solitary confinement as well, which
Ooh, in the Rotary?
I think it's like next to the Rotary from the pictures that I saw.
Okay, because I was like, what did they just have like a more steel one than the others?
I can't remember what floor it's on, but there is like at least one solitary confinement cell that was on
Hmm.
one of the floors. So the second floor cell block contained 10 cells that would be used for convicts anywhere from 1 month to a year. So the people held on this floor likely committed harsher crimes. They could be waiting for trial or were waiting to be transferred to another correctional facility.
Okay.
And on each of the levels, with the exception of the top level, which is where the jailer and his wife would stay, there was a smaller area on each level for daytime activities such as reading, talking, playing cards, or even listening to the radio. And obviously, it was pretty small, and I'm not quite sure how you would be allowed to be out, so there wouldn't be a prison break, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
Hmm.
And as I mentioned, the jailer and his wife would live in the small apartment that was built on the top floor, and the wife would make meals for all of the prisoners.
That's so rude.
I know. Food would be passed through a small hole in the wall onto a metal table that was fitted on either side of the cell door. It would easily fit on a tray, which would include a plate, spoon, and a cup, in addition to the meals that had been prepared by the matron. And the jailer would utilize the hand crank to assist her with dispensing food to all of the inmates.
Okay. Well, at least she had help with that.
Unlike traditional jails, the inmates wouldn't be given a uniform and instead would wear whatever clothes they had been arrested in.
Oh no. Just the one thing.
They would also be allowed one cold shower a week, during which they were expected to wear their clothes as there was no on-site laundry available.
Oh, so this place stank.
Yeah, it wouldn't be until the 1930s that a laundry room would be built in the yard.
That's awful.
And although originally designed to hold at max 80 convicts, during the farm strike of 1932, the jail maxed out at 167 prisoners, with many of them sleeping on blankets on the floor.
That's a recipe for people to get murdered and trampled. Because it was 30 people total, right? No, it was 50 with the lady, children. No,
60 total.
60 total. But
Mm.
God,
So why aren't all jails designed this way?
because it's dumb.
Let's talk about it. So the turntable gears that, move the cells had a habit of jamming.
Yeah.
And according to a local paper in 1887, just 2 years after the jail opened, it was, quote, pretty much a failure, end quote.
Yeah, that's like way too much weight for gears like that to do consistently and well. Yeah.
Additionally, that heavy drum that kind of held all the things together was
Mhm.
balancing on a 3-foot square base that had a habit of shifting on the unstable soil.
Yeah, because you're right next to the Missouri River. Sand.
Many other rotary jails, like the one in Council Bluffs, had to be welded to a fixed point and refitted after just a few years of operation.
That's not good.
And it was noted, quote, due to the intricacies of its rotating mechanism, the buildings needed to be perfectly level. As the building settled, the rotating cage could often jam or jump track. It could be days before the cell gates could be opened, end quote.
Great. So days before anybody could get a meal. But they got 3 a day.
They did. Fun fact, a crane from the Union Pacific Railroad had to once be used to put the cage back on its track.
That's not good.
No, it's not. Also, part of why we don't see these anymore had to do with the fact that the metal cell walls and floors would go from being an oven in the summer to a freezer in the winter.
I was just going to say, I doubt if they were trying to save money, there was definitely no insulation. Did they even do insulation often during that
No.
time even?
No.
Oh, God. And then if you didn't have shoes on and you just had the one pair of clothes.
Additionally, it was a fire hazard. If a fire broke out, evacuation would only be as fast as the crank could be turned to allow the inmates to escape, meaning that some convicts may end up dead waiting to get let out.
Yep. Smoke inhalation.
Yep.
Absolutely. burning from the steel
Yeah.
on their feet and the walls.
Also, intoxication could be an issue. It wasn't uncommon for drunks to be thrown in the jail to kind of sober up, and sometimes they would pass out with their hands, arms, feet, and legs hanging out of the bars.
No, 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 no.
Which poses a problem when the jail gets turned. Which could result in everything from just having a mangled limb to a surprise amputation.
Yeah, not great.
Not only that, but there was no really great way to segregate inmates other than trying to put the quote-unquote worse offenders on the higher floors. For example, sex workers and chicken thieves could be housed in the same cells as sexual offenders and murderers.
Yeah, that's not great.
And as a further example, you could be housed with someone like Gilbert Ranfelt, who was jailed for writing a bad check, or you could end up sharing a cell with Jake Bird, who was convicted of killing as many as 50 people with an axe.
Great. I bet he would recommend that you stick your foot out the cage.
Yeah. Now, according to Keith Mellon, who was Council Bluffs chief of police back in 2006, quote, small, dark, noisy cells that were cold in winter, hot in summer, with hard steel bunks and no modern plumbing, no exercise area, and guards that probably weren't really understanding of the prisoner's plight or very tolerant of any shenanigans, does not sound like a place that I would want to be, end quote.
No. I think I'd rather be at a sanitarium.
Honestly, yes.
Which is really saying something.
Yeah. Now, the rotary mechanism was disabled by the fire marshal in 1960.
It took that long?
Yeah, but it gets better. An inmate passed away in his cell from natural causes, but due to a mechanical malfunction, the body couldn't be retrieved for 2 days.
That's horrific.
And even though the squirrel cage was continually being condemned, taxpayers refused to pay for a better jail. So it limped along year after year after year.
That's really awful.
Right. And according to Ryan Roenfeld, who now owns the jail, he noted that, quote, in its last years, it was just a free-for-all, end quote.
Yeah, I bet. I bet it was just a place of just nightmares.
The building continued to be used as the county jail until it was finally closed on December 1st, 1969, after it was declared, quote, unfit for human habitation, end quote.
I hate that it took that long.
Fun fact, of all the rotary jails, with the exception of the Squirrel Cage Jail, they were condemned by June 22nd of 1939, but the one in Council Bluffs hung around for another 30 years.
That's so awful. And all because the community refused to pay for anything else.
Second fun fact.
Hmm.
In January of 1969, that final year, 4 prisoners dug a hole through one of the rusted iron walls in an attempt to escape. And they even left a note behind that read, quote, Dear Sir, I sincerely hope that this escape will help you get a new jail because you need one, end quote.
Oh my gosh. So they were successful?
I think they eventually did get caught and get brought back.
Oh.
But it was one of the last escape attempts made at the jail.
Dang.
Now we're going to talk about some ghosty things.
Yeah, I bet it's super haunted.
As is the case with many locations that see lots of conflict and or death, particularly jails and prisons and all that fun stuff.
And Christian morgues.
Church morgues, yeah.
Oh, God.
The Squirrel Cage is said to be haunted. Visitors to the jail, and even those who were housed there, as early as the 1900s, started to report strange happenings. So, like, within 20 years of it being a thing.
That's crazy.
One example is that of a jailer that ran the squirrel cage in the 1950s, who refused to live in the 4th floor apartment.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
After hearing phantom footsteps, he chose to instead sleep on the 2nd floor with the rest of the inmates rather than try to figure out what was going on upstairs. So he commandeered an area of the 2nd floor, and he was like, I'm just going to be here. No, I'm not going up there.
Gross.
Now, there have been 4 known deaths that took place on the property. That of a prisoner who died as a result of a heart attack, another prisoner who fell 3 stories attempting to carve his name on the jail ceiling,
Oh, God.
another prisoner who completed suicide via hanging, and finally, an officer was shot during a riot gun training when another officer's gun misfired.
That sucks.
There is a note that a prisoner named Willie Brown completed suicide on accident when he ate glass, attempting to get a medical transfer out of the prison. So I don't know if
Oh my
that's
God.
one of the 4, and the other one, I don't know. So potentially 5.
Horrific.
Staff and volunteers that work at the museum have experienced everything from footsteps, hearing voices, whispers, and hearing and seeing doors moving. Others have even seen dark shadows crossing doorways or the stairs.
No.
Many people familiar with the jail believe that the real person haunting it is Jake Bird, the serial killer that I mentioned earlier. Known as the axe murderer from Carter Lake, he was held for felonious assault in 1928 before he was sent to the Iowa State Penitentiary in Fort Madison the following year, where he was incarcerated until his parole in 1941. I don't know what year exactly, but he was later hanged in Tacoma, Washington on charges of murder.
Whoa.
So it's possible, but at the same time, he was put to death in a state very far away from Iowa. So I don't know. Residual maybe, I don't know.
Horcrux with a disembodied toe that he took from a cellmate.
Something. He made a Horcrux of the guy that was trying to carve his name in the ceiling.
Yeah. He took his pencil. Or his little shiv.
Fun fact, 2 of the last 3 men to be executed in the state of Iowa were housed at one time at the Squirrel Cage Jail.
Gross. Sorry, dudes. But also maybe not sorry if you were bad enough to be hanged. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might have been really bad.
Yeah. Another fun fact, their last prisoner, a 19-year-old by the name of George Kibbat, one of those, attempted to escape one winter night when he got caught on the iron fence that encloses part of the yard. And he hung there until authorities located him the following morning.
Oh, no. Oh.
So today, out of the 18 total rotary jails that were constructed in the 1880s, from New Hampshire all the way to Utah, only 2 other rotary jails are still standing. There's a 2-story structure in Crawfordsville, Indiana, and a 1-story jail in Gallatin, Missouri. Gallatin?
Okay.
All 3 have now been converted to museums to preserve their unique histories.
Yeah.
Others that were demolished were located in Missouri, Kentucky, Colorado, Wisconsin, West Virginia, Vermont, Texas, New York, Kansas, Indiana, and Utah. Which is crazy.
I know. I just hate it. I would be so afraid of seeing one of those in a densely populated town.
Yeah, especially if you had no idea what it was.
Yeah, I'd be like, what kind of scary structure is that?
As an aside, in 2005, the Historical Society of Pottawatomie County completed 2 of its 3-part $400,000 restoration project on the property, which included masonry repairs and tuck pointing. The final phase of the renovation focused on doors and windows, including window bars, and there were also plans put in place to restore sections of the interior, install a freestanding fire escape, and restore the original apartment on the 4th floor. So now that it's no longer a jail, we can invest money into it.
And like almost half of what it took to build it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so dumb.
So, if you find yourself in Council Bluffs and would like to visit, it is located on 226 Pearl Street and costs $5 to $7 admission, depending on your age, and is open April to October on Thursday through Sunday, and November to March is only open on the weekends. While there, you can also purchase a copy of the book Tales from the Squirrel Cage Jail, written by Ryan Roanfield and Dr. Richard Warner, which was published in 2009 and details the stories of the many people who called the Squirrel Cage home at one point or another. And proceeds go towards the Historical Society and the upkeep of the building.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And that is the Squirrel Cage Jail.
I remember hearing about it. I remember part of the story. I think we've spoken about it at some point. Maybe just in passing.
Yeah, I think we talked about going to see it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's familiar to me. Like, I feel like it's almost one of the stories that kind of helped create this podcast, actually.
Maybe. We love to hear from you, and there's a couple of ways you can reach out to us. You can email us at yeoldecrimepodcast@gmail.com, where you can send us story ideas, share any spooky stories you may have, fun gifts, or even just to say hello.
You can also reach out to us via snail mail. Remember mail? Our mailing address is Ye Olde Crime Podcast, P.O. Box 341, Wyoming, Minnesota 55092. Fun fact, we like to send out thank you cards with fun stickers you can't get at our shop, so it's worth the cost of a stamp.
Are you tired of hearing about the Ted Bundys and Jeffrey Dahmers on True Crime Podcasts? I thought so. We've got something just for you. I'm Pat.
And I'm Darcy, and we are the hosts of Pod of Terror, a true crime podcast that dives into lesser-known cases from around the world.
Grab a glass of wine and join us every Thursday as we discuss the most vile, despicable human beings on the planet.
It'll be a dark and twisted journey, so don't forget your drink. You're gonna need it.
We're looking forward to seeing you next Thursday.
This week's podcast plug is the Pod of Terror podcast. Join Pat and Darcy as they discuss the most vile, despicable human beings on the planet, from serial killers to family annihilators, cults and scorned lovers. It will be a dark and twisted journey. They're part of the Darkcast Network, and we will have a link to their show in the show notes. If you love the show, the best way to support us is to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Good Pods, CastBox, Podcast Addict, and or Audible. Links to all of these are in our show notes, or if you're already listening on one of these platforms, you know what to do.
Oh, and while you're at it, shoot us a question you'd like to hear us answer on the pod. We'll give you a special shout out and address your burning questions all at the same time. The weirder, the better. Submit them via link in our show notes or shoot them to us in our DMs.
This week's listener question comes from our friend Dustin over at Sandman Stories Presents.
Hey, Dustin.
And he would like to know, do you have a favorite horror writer?
Nope. Don't read them. Hate it. Hate it all. Absolutely not.
Not even Stephen
That's
King?
a good day. I honestly don't know if I've ever read one of his books, truly.
Really?
Dad's going to be really mad. I don't think I have.
I think the only one that I've read was Carrie.
I feel like that's one of his more tame and docile ones.
Yeah.
Teen angst. No, I don't have one. I'm not a big, well, funnily enough, I'm really not into it. I like the historical crime because I can distance myself from it. But even then, if you've listened for a while, you know that I struggle with like the gorier stories when it comes to like shows and movies and stuff too. I have a really hard time with gore and like excessive violence. It's not something that I seek out. But for whatever reason, I can handle medical gore pretty well. If there's like a job to do. I don't seek it out in like reality shows or anything, but when I worked in the hospital for a while, I did see amputations and stuff, and that didn't bother me as much because it was a job and I was able to like separate it.
No.
But other than that, like just that type of horror stuff, I can't. It's not for me. I did like that children's book, In a Dark, Dark Place.
In a Dark, Dark Room.
Yep, that's my favorite one. There you go.
That's a good
In a
one.
Dark, Dark Room. That's my favorite.
That's a good compendium of creepy children's stories. That's a good one.
Yeah. Thanks.
I don't read a whole lot of horror. It's not a genre I seek out very often.
Mhm.
But the times that I have read works by H.P. Lovecraft, I have enjoyed them. So I enjoy more of the kind of like psychological horror, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Not so much like gory type of horror.
Yeah. Thrillers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to say H.P. Lovecraft.
Nice. That's a good, solid classic.
And if you would like to ask us a question, you can slide into our DMs or you can email us at yeoldecrimepodcast@gmail.com. We also have a link to a Google form in our show notes where you can submit a question as well if you are interested.
Nice.
And on that note, what is something good you'd like to share?
I got to see our relative that lives in Canada today.
Mm-hmm.
She's visiting her siblings down here, and I got to pick her up from the airport and have lunch with her and catch up for the hour drive it took to get her to where she needed to go. So it was really nice. I had a really pleasant afternoon with her.
Nice.
What about you?
So I mentioned at the top that I was reading this book that took up a lot of my mental time. And it...
Brain Candy.
Brain Candy. And it is a book by a woman who I am hoping will be a future guest for our October episodes. Her name is Rose Sinister, or at least that's the moniker she goes by. And in case you were interested, the book is called This Crimson Debt. And she published it January of last year. It's about vampires.
Nice.
It takes place in Chicago, Illinois, funnily enough. And the premise is this 24-year-old woman gets turned into a vampire at a party and has no recollection of how it happened. So that's kind of the start of the book. And then it kind of goes into...
It's just her like trying to figure it out.
Trying to figure out who her maker is so she can get back at them. And then like there's a romantic element to it. There's a friendship element to it. It's very good. Nice. I had a really hard time putting it down. So that's my good thing.
That's awesome.
All right. Shall we?
We shall.
Want to be social with us? You can see pics from this week's episode, bonus content, and funny memes on X at Ye Olde Crime Pod, or on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube at Ye Olde Crime Podcast.
Speaking of YouTube, we have a special playlist just for our Can You Crack the Cramp Word segments with our guest podcasters to see who can correctly guess the meaning of some obscure Victorian slang terms. If that's your thing, check it out.
And on that note, as always, I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Madison.
And we'll see you next time with another tale
As old as crime.